What's up, everyone? Jeff from Lewis Physical Therapy and Sports Rehab here. We're going to talk today about loaded carries, really why I think they are a crucial piece of a training program for either an athlete or an adult that is just trying to keep up with their just fitness and training for life type of movements, and really how often, how frequent, just answering the how behind we implement them. So the first and most important thing I think we need to talk about loaded carries is really the why, which is we are promoting trunk stiffness and bracing. So the ability for that trunk to remain rigid and essentially a transfer of force. So we kind of look at it from two different areas. Take your adults that are just your adults, but your athletes as well. They're doing heavy squatting, deadlifting, barbell work more than anything. You want to be able to have a stiff trunk that you can brace well under load. If you cannot brace and maintain a stiff trunk, what's going to happen is you're going to get a lot of excessive spinal movement, and we just ideally do not want to promote that from a just low back health standpoint more than anything. So that's from any kind of training standpoint. And then from a sport performance standpoint, baseball, for example, I look at you want to be able to maintain that trunk stiffness and the forces produced predominantly from the lower body and transferred through the core and trunk up to the arm. If you cannot maintain stiffness throughout that trunk, well, you are going to leak energy, which essentially is going to lead to more stress on other structures, such as the arm in this case. So that is why we really go about looking at trunk stiffness and bracing. I think the best way to kind of paint the picture is if you have a heavy trap bar that you pick the weight up, and if you try to do marching in place, if you are not stiff throughout here, you're going to feel like you're side to side. You might get a little bit of flaring at the low back. So you'll know right away whether you are firmly locked down here and holding it in that position. There's some videos on my YouTube channel of different carrying drills that you can go ahead and look at, but that's the big one in terms of the why we do loaded carries. The next best thing I like to talk about is you can get as creative as you want. Use what you have. So perfect example. So I train in my basement. It's a home gym. I do not have room to go and walk a bunch of places. So all I do is I load the trap bar up and I just march in place nice and slowly, making sure I'm maintaining good alignment. So I'm either in a trap bar carry or I'll go a single arm kettlebell rack carry, and you can march in place. You could go for distance. Dumbbells, kettlebells, trap bar, or if you have more unconventional things, which are great, some heavier med balls, some sandbags. You can get as creative as you want with this, and that's the beauty of loaded carries. So long as you're going for the stimulus you want to, that's the nice thing about here. And that brings us into this part here of there's endless variations. You have so many different variations. I can't write them all or cover them all on the board here, but not only from an equipment standpoint, but from a position standpoint. Are you going into an overhead hold, a opposite cross carry? Are you in a split squat? Are you on a knee? Are you on two knees? Are you on one leg? There's so many different variations you can do, and it's different for each people. You don't have to do. I'm not saying everyone needs to do all of them. It's going to be different for each individual. Say you have someone that has a bit of a shoulder issue, but you want to get some shoulder stimulus where they can't hold a bunch of heavy weight. Just put them on one leg. It will make things a little bit more challenging. You're not necessarily exposing higher load to the arm, but to the system in general. And that's actually one thing I want to mention that we didn't talk about here is I do think you are getting a systemic, just a higher nervous system involvement the heavier load you use for carries. So again, when we look at strength training to a degree, hypertrophy is stacking on muscle size, things like that. Not disregarding that. That definitely is a big piece of more structural changes. But a lot of strength training is the neurological side of things. And I think that's where the heavy loaded carries come into play here, is you are essentially overloading your system. So you are getting just a lot more recruitment overall, and you might feel some just denser and whatnot, but you should just feel a lot stiffer, stronger, which will be helpful for you to then transfer to your higher loading movements. Or if you just are someone that just wants to get your main loaded for some heavy carries too, there's a lot of benefit from that. The second to last thing here is work capacity. So let's just say, you have, this is more kind of the adult side of things, someone that can't really run, they can't do a lot of impact stuff, and you're just kind of looking for ways that you can just get some capacity and some conditioning in more than anything. I think this is a phenomenal way for some people to get some capacity work in. And it might be either standalone or as part of a circuit where you're trying to get that aerobic system up a little bit and raise the floor a little bit, which will help for your higher intensity movements from a lifting standpoint and recovery between those. So again, from this standpoint, work capacity, load up that trap bar, walk up and down. You could do sleds. You could do the trap bar carries. There's so many things you can do, but do not neglect that as a way to get your capacity work in. Not everyone needs to run. And if you can't run because of prior injuries, that is fine. Don't feel like you have to force yourself from that standpoint. So the other side of it too is just like, again, we'll say sleds, carries, or just, walking. You put a weighted vest on. Go for that. Like, there's so many different ways you can get at this capacity work without the traditional, I got to go for a mile, 2 mile, 3 mile run. Most people, if they haven't run like that in a long time, and you try to go right into that, it just, not to say you can't get through it, but I think there's better ways to get at the goals. Like, we want to look at training from this standpoint. This is more the adult side of things, but the athletic side of things too. We want to look at training as something that allows us to achieve our goals, but be able to continue to train. No one likes to be able to get in that cycle of you ramp up for 3 weeks, then you're hurt, and you got to come back down for 3, and then you get back on, back off. Like, we just want to avoid that as much as possible. And I think this is a great way that we can kind of get that just baseline foundational level of fitness to an appropriate level to then support some higher intensity training. And then going over here, so I kind of like this on here because a couple things I want to tie it into. There's been a lot of talk as of lately in terms of the benefits of, of grip strength as we just age and whatnot, which is very important. Grip strength is a big piece of it. And a lot of people go at that from the standpoint, I'm going to hang from a bar for a long period of time. And I don't want this to sound like I'm demonizing dead hangs, things like that. I'm not. I have just found for some people when they kind of go body weight hanging into a dead hang like that, it just sometimes for a lot of people, it blows their shoulder up. It just gets a ton of subacromial impingement. You can get a either flared up bursa, a cuff tendon. And again, I am not saying anything against that. I actually like doing hangs, but engaged hangs more than anything. So with that, we kind of look at, okay, well, how else can we train grip? That's where heavy carries are going to be a great way to train grip. And we look at then just the total limb strength. Again, we've already talked about for a heavy carry, the benefit from a trunk bracing and stiffness standpoint and the lower body, but it is going to teach that shoulder, that pack down position. If you have a heavy weight and you just let your shoulders relax, it's going to pull you down. Your neck's going to get jacked up. You just don't want that. So the kind of pack down position we're trying to go for with a hang from a pull-up, you are working that similar position from that hang, from that heavy or loaded carry position. And the fact of the matter is a lot of people cannot do a pull-up, and that's okay. For some people, we need to have something in the middle that just helps them kind of get to that point. And that might be, hey, are we going to use a heavy carry from, again, just a general systemic loading standpoint as a way to just kind of get not only their aerobic level up, but just their upper body endurance and strength as well before we get them into an over position for a pull-up. So again, just things to think about. If you can do pull-ups, go for it right away. But if you can't, these can be a good option as a kind of way to kind of meet yourself halfway for your current level. So again, there's going to be some exercises on my channel that just kind of show different carry variations. You can find a vast majority of them online. You can do a couple different ways from a frequency standpoint. If you're someone that likes to do a little bit daily from a warm-up, you just like to do one set of 30 seconds of a suitcase carry, a rack carry, just kind of lock in that pelvic and trunk position. Great. I do that sometimes too. It just kind of wakes things up. Or you then just have 3 days of some kind of heavier carry variations. There's a lot of different variations you can go about that. And a lot of it comes down to what your needs are and what suits them best. So if you have questions on how to implement this, drop them below in the comment section and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.